Hi, this is Aaron, and welcome back to the Church Brain. This week, we talked about scoreboards. And what kind of scoreboards are you using right now? Because I think we all have some similar scoreboards that we use. Attendance, giving, baptisms, online views. None of those things are bad. In fact, they can be incredibly helpful. The danger isn't that we track them. The danger is that we begin letting them tell us who we are. And that's why I said the scoreboard's a terrible shepherd. Today, I want to tackle a little different question, and that's how do I keep the scoreboard from becoming a shepherd? See, I don't think the answer starts on Monday morning, and I'm sure many of you might have thought, well, fix my Monday morning. Here's the thing. I think it starts about noon on Sunday. Let me tell you something that took me years to learn. Sunday afternoon, it's the worst time to evaluate Sunday morning. Specifically, the first few hours into the afternoon, it's really not the time to evaluate Sunday morning. I wish somebody had told me that when I first got started, but we weren't talking about these things. We're talking about them now, and I can hopefully help you because I was messed up for a while. See, back then I'd get in the car after church and immediately begin replaying the entire morning. I'd usually start by looking over at my wife and saying, "Hey, how was the sermon? Was it okay? Was it good? Did it hit? Did it land? Should I have handled that illustration differently?" Then I'd start thinking, "Well, why didn't people respond? Where was that family today?" Well, attendance felt light, but I guess that means giving probably won't be very good either. I'd replay these conversations from the foyer to the front door of my house. I'd think about the invitation. I'd start making conclusions before I even made it home. Can I tell you what I've learned? The problem wasn't that I was evaluating ministry. The problem was when I was evaluating ministry. Over time, I realized I was trying to make wise ministry decisions while I was still physically and emotionally living inside Sunday morning. Think about what your body just experienced. You woke up carrying the weight of the sermon. You preached. You listened to people. You maybe counseled some people in between services or during Sunday school or between Sunday school and church. I mean, have we not all had that one person that comes up 5 minutes before we're supposed to have worship service and go, "Pastor, do you have a minute?" Those hardly ever end well. You prayed with people. You shook 100 hands. You celebrated with people. You grieved with people. You solved problems nobody else even knew existed. Some of you preached twice. Some of you led meetings between services. Some of you went straight to a brief meeting after church. And then we expect ourselves to make clear, objective, rational ministry evaluations before we've even finished lunch. Why? Why do we do that to ourselves? We don't expect that of anybody else or anywhere else. This year, I've spent a lot of time in the gym, and not like I haven't been before, but I've spent a lot of time in the gym these last several months trying to, get healthier. And one thing that I've learned is nobody thinks resting between sets is laziness. Now, think about that. You do a hard set, you rest. You don't immediately jump into second set. You're supposed to take a rest period. I had a trainer the other day said maybe even take 90 seconds to maybe 2 minutes, depending on if it was a failure set or not. Nobody watches somebody put the weight down for 90 seconds and says, well, they just must not be committed to it. They don't do that. The rest is part of the workout. Recovery is a part of the process. Your muscles recover during the rest. Without recovery, there's not another good set behind it. So let me ask you something. Why do we pastors think recovery is somehow unspiritual? Why do we believe that if we slow down for a couple of hours after Sunday, we've somehow become less committed? I don't think recovery competes with ministry. I think recovery is a part of ministry. And that became one of the biggest lessons of my own pastoral life. My Sunday afternoons developed a somewhat of a rhythm over the years. I'd go home. I wouldn't review the sermon. I wouldn't review, these different things. I'd have lunch with my family. Sometimes I'd watch some TV, or if a ball game was on, I'd watch it for an hour or so. Sometimes I'd even go for a walk because most everybody took a nap or did some other things in the afternoon. Sometimes I'd just sit and let my mind wander and just kind of become quiet again. Now, notice what I didn't say. I didn't say I took the rest of the day off. Honestly, I'd probably have felt guilty if I'd never gone back to the office on Sundays, or hadn't at least opened up my laptop and did some work at some point in the afternoons. But usually around 2:30 to 3 o'clock, I'd head back to the church because almost every Sunday I've got some afternoon meeting that I need to attend to, something that needs to be handled. And so I'd prepare for the meeting, or I'd organize the week. If I don't have a meeting that afternoon, I'm still jumping on the computer and organizing my week. I'd answer any emails that came in from that morning. I'd start thinking about next Sunday. I always preached in series, and so the next sermon up was not hard. I knew what the next sermon up was going to be. I just opened up the spreadsheet and I saw what was next up. But I intentionally tried anyway. I intentionally drifted away from analytics of Sunday morning, and I pushed that off to Monday. So I'd prepare for meetings. I'd look at my week. I'd look at the calendar. I would do quadrant 2 exercises. I would start looking at next Sunday's sermon, maybe Wednesday night activity. What supplies do I need? But I would push analytics off until Monday. Sunday was a work day for me. In fact, what I usually did is I tried to leave about 1 o'clock on Thursday, and I'd stay home until Sunday because that was a rhythm that was working for me. Now, I wasn't trying to work less. I was just trying to work healthier. And my wife can attest that it has taken years for me to have any sense of work-life balance. For a lot of years, just workaholic. I was always working. I was always doing things. That's not healthy. I did it. You've done it. You might still be doing it. And I'm simply suggesting that there can be a difference, that we need to learn how to work healthier. Now, working healthier doesn't mean not working at all. Sometimes we can take work-life balance to an extreme on the life side, and sometimes we take a work-life balance to an extreme on the work side. I'm suggesting there's a middle ground that we need to find. But see, recovery wasn't replacing the ministry, but it was preparing me to think clearly about ministry. You've got to have a downtime. And see, that's where I think many of us struggle. We review before we've actually recovered. See, let's talk about that for a second. So if a pastor called me on Monday morning and said, "Hey, attendance was way down yesterday," do you know what my first question would be? How many? It wasn't how many did you have? It used to be. But this is what I'd ask. Why do you think that was? What was going on in town, or what goes on in life? Why do you think that was? You see, there's usually reasons why. You've got vacation, seasonal activities, illness, the weather, community events, hospitalizations. You see, as a pastor, I often already knew who wasn't there before I ever looked at the attendance report. I'd look around the church and see who wasn't here. I wasn't surprised. I already knew 3 families are on vacation, and Gladys is in the hospital, and the Jones they're on vacation traveling. Context matters. Then I'd ask a second question. How are you feeling about that? See, those are different questions. The first one's about the facts. Why did that happen? What are the facts behind why that number is what it is? We're not going to evaluate the number. Oh my goodness, your identity is not wrapped up in how many attended on Sunday. Now, it used to be for me, it may be for you, but we've got to get beyond that. How are you feeling about it? That's an emotional question. See, healthy pastors, of which I'm still trying to be one at times, we learn to separate the two because sometimes nothing's actually wrong with the church. The pastor's simply in a discouraged moment. Sometimes attendance is declining. Sometimes it's just July. Those are not the same conversation. Don't conflate it all into the same thing because it's not. One of the most helpful leadership ideas I've ever learned came from adaptive leadership. Ron Heifetz talks about moving from the dance floor to the balcony. Now, I love that picture. See, on the dance floor, all you can see is what's just happening all around you. But on the balcony, you see the whole room. Pastor, you need some balconies. Let's imagine attendance was 105. The dance floor says, oh, we're down. But the balcony asks better questions. Where have we been the last 6 months? Has attendance been stable all summer? This is just lower than the spring? Were 20 people already accounted for? What usually happens in the fall? Do we get an uptick in the fall? What's the trend? Let's look at the last 5 years. How does this fit into the last 5 years? See, I'm not saying analytics are wrong. I'm not saying numbers are wrong. I'm not saying tracking is wrong. I'm saying don't let that scoreboard become who you are. Churches breathe. They have seasons. They have rhythms. But pastors and people have a tendency to panic over the moments. One Sunday is not a diagnosis. It's a symptom. And symptoms invite investigation. They don't demand immediate panic. It's true with attendance. It's true with giving. Oh my goodness. Our counters would come in on Mondays. And if it was the third Sunday or the fourth Sunday, and it was going to be a low Sunday, panic would instill. Oh my goodness, this is what the budget requirements. But we only got this much in, and it took months. And I would ask them, what was the first Sunday? Oh, had a great first Sunday. Okay, so the first Sunday was 3 times the budget needs. So that makes up for. So I had to help them see. We got to look at the whole month. Not a week-by-week analysis. It was depressing for them half the month. Now, I'm not saying that every month wasn't also depressing sometimes, but we had to expand our horizon a little bit. See, that's why healthy leaders become students of trend lines instead of prisoners of the moment. Here's something else I've learned. The scoreboard always looks different after you've recovered a little. When you're exhausted, every number feels personal. It's like it's a personal referendum on your leadership. Oh, we were down today. I guess I'm a bad preacher. I'm a bad leader. Oh, nobody came down the aisle today. I guess that's a horrible sermon. I've really got to listen. The scoreboard looks different after you've recovered. And when you're exhausted, every number feels personal. But when you've rested a little bit, the same number just becomes information, not identity. Information. It's a completely different posture. You see, eventually, I think almost without realizing it, my Monday questions, they changed. Instead of asking, what does this say about me? Well, I started asking, what is this trying to teach me? How is this informing me? That's more emotional maturity. It's leadership. And I think that's what allows us to come back to what Jesus said in Matthew 6. Don't worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow has enough concerns of its own, and each day, well, it's got enough trouble for itself. Sometimes I paraphrase it that way. Listen, Sunday was yesterday. God gave you grace for Sunday. He'll give you grace for Monday. Learn from yesterday. Celebrate yesterday. Adjust because of yesterday. But don't let yesterday shepherd who you are. Shepherd it today. Here's what I hope you'll remember this week and as you approach the weekend. It's not that attendance doesn't matter, because it does. It's not that giving doesn't matter. It does. And it's not that we shouldn't review our ministry. We absolutely should. Just don't review it too soon. Because you can't properly review Sunday ministry until you've recovered from Sunday ministry. Lead well this week. Hey, if this encouraged you, I hope you'd subscribe to the Church Brain. If you know somebody else that this might encourage, send it to them and encourage them to subscribe, and you'll get the leadership briefing on Mondays, the podcasts on Thursdays, and everything right there in your email box, and we can connect together and we can have conversations that go deeper than even these articles and podcasts. I hope you have a great day, a great weekend. Lead well, my friend.